Hi, and it's Dr. Millie, and today I'm excited to host a Lunch and Learn with our featured coach who's taking over NatMed Coach today. Her name is Cyndie Burkhart, and Cyndie is a certified integrative health and nutrition coach, and I'm just waiting for her to appear online, and then we will begin. My name is Dr. Millie, and I am the founder of NatMed Coach. I'm a naturopathic doctor as well, and NatMed Coach provides concierge programs as well as a virtual health club for those interested in participating in their own self-care and would like guidance on that. Our virtual health club features various coaches who coach on special topics and of their own interest and expertise, and we guarantee at least one session per week, which you can tune in live or you can tune into the replay once it's sent. And about once a month or so, we also go live on Facebook Live to share this further as to what we're doing. And I am just waiting for Cyndie to appear on my screen. We had to reschedule this because it didn't work last week, and so hoping it's going to work today, and everything's going to. And so just waiting for Cyndie to comment. And I see Judy's on. Hi, Judy. Judy is one of our NatMed coaches as well, and she'll be coaching in November on how to eat out during when you're having allergies or food sensitivities. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then we've got some upcoming sessions next week. We actually have two next week. We have on Tuesday night, that's October 2nd. Sorry, that's Tuesday at noon, October 2nd. We have the demo coach, Ali Might. She will be giving a demonstration on how to use aromatherapy. Sorry. Ali Might will be discussing and coaching on how to use aromatherapy for self-care, and she will be giving us, she's an aromatouch therapist as well, so she'll be giving different ideas about how to de-stress at home, turn your home into a spa. It's going to be really exciting. The following day, on October the 3rd, we have a holistic health coach and corporate coach, Betsy Legale, from Florida, who will be coaching on how to detox your home and your body. So how to get rid of all those toxic cleaning products in your house, what to swap them and trade them in for, as well as self-care products that we use on our bodies. And that's going to be exciting. And then on October 7th, we actually have another Facebook Live, which will be bringing back Paula Loverick. She is the health coach who did a Facebook Live with me on hypertension about a month ago, and she'll be coming back and doing another session on specifically, we did the myths and truths of heart disease, and we covered a lot of bases on that talk, so she'll be coming back and we'll be talking about hypertension specifically. And then on the third Saturday of October, we have Dr. Patricia Pimentel-Selassie, who will be coming and discussing CBD oil and medical marijuana. And so that's going to be great. And then on the 24th, we've got Ayurvedic practitioner Shriram Murthy, who will be talking about how to eat according to your body type, your Ayurvedic constitution. So he'll be talking about the doshas, Kapha, Pitta, and Vata. And then I'll be on at the end of the month, the last Monday of the month. I'll be talking about how to eat for your sun, moon, and rising signs. So we've got a couple of nutrition talks this month, a couple of de-stressing, including today, and as long as we can get Cyndie on. So I'm just inviting Cyndie Burkhart into the session. It looks like we have to invite her in. And so I'm going to anticipate that she's coming in, and then I'm going to read her bio. So Cyndie is a certified integrative health and nutrition coach. She graduated from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, accredited by SUNY Purchase, and she's board certified. She's board Association of Drugless Practitioners. Cyndie completed advanced courses in hormone health and coaching mastery from IIN and additional certification from the New York City Department for the Aging, the Stay Well program, and Cornell Cooperative Extension, Nutrition and Health. Cyndie creates customized health and wellness programs for individuals and leads small group workshops, including worksite wellness programs. She also consults organizations on their health and wellness food-related initiatives. Prior to establishing her business, Appetite for Life, and committing to health and wellness, Cyndie had an accomplished corporate career, and this is the basis for her talk today. This gave her a firsthand view of the pitfalls of chronic stress in the workplace and led her to focus on helping busy professionals who face stress daily. Her classes and workshops include managing stress in the workplace, cooking simple and delicious meals with whole food, eating to meet fitness and nutrition targets, and weight loss. And so thanks so much for everybody for tuning in today. Hi, Cyndie, how are you?
Hi, Dr. Millie. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, it took me a minute to get connected, but here I am.
Great. So you can take it away if you're ready. I've introduced you and I've introduced Health Club, and you're on.
Thank you for that very nice introduction. I appreciate it. So I'm talking today about adrenal fatigue and stress in the workplace. So I wanted to start by describing a typical workday. That actually, this is my direct experience of a typical workday back when I was working in corporate kind of capacity. It's just kind of the basis of what I'm going to be talking about here. So I'll be interested to hear later what other people's experiences are. But just imagine you are you get to work. You've commuted in New York City's crazy subway system. Your phone is ringing, your text is going, there's emails, there's somebody by your desk, there's clients in the conference room, and you haven't even taken off your coat yet. You just arrived into the office. So you're going to go into the meeting and have breakfast in the meeting with the client, whatever was brought in, coffee, bagels, muffins, things like that. You're going to work through lunch. So that means you also have lunch that's brought in, usually whatever's catered, with sandwiches. You know, typically it's chips, cookies, sodas, maybe some water, things like that. You work throughout the day. Now the client's in from out of town, so they're expecting a big dinner. So you got an expense account. So that's going to be drinks, probably a nice restaurant, a 3-course meal, dessert. Maybe you've got drinks after dinner. And you've had a long day just with this one client, and you've eaten whatever has been brought to you or catered or whatnot. You're going to go home late, probably check in on email again, make sure there wasn't anything that you missed or need to catch up one last time. You plop on the couch for a minute just to unwind, and that's where you end up for the night. It's a restless sleep, or it's probably no sleep at all. You get up the next day and you do it all over again. And this is like Groundhog Day. So that's one scenario. Yep. I'm sure some people can relate to some of this. Or maybe there's another kind of a day where you wake up and there's an emergency, quote unquote, that started at 5:30 a.m. because top management just read the campaign that's supposed to launch today and they want to change everything. So you pretty much have to hit the ground running. Your heart's racing and you haven't even gotten to the office yet because there's all these emails you need to catch up on. You get there, you have to meet with all your different internal teams, try and find your outside agency, change your messaging, your visuals, your website, everything. You've got to coordinate with all these internal teams, go up the food chain of approvals again, and you still have to launch this campaign the same day because your company's announced it publicly and you can't miss that date. So all during that day, you didn't get anything else done that you were supposed to get done. You were focused on this, so all your other work piles up. You didn't have time to stop and eat all day because you're running around to different places, you're coordinating all this stuff. You're actually mad when you have to stop and go pee because you don't have time to go pee. So you hold it in and you keep going. Your boss is tense and they're checking up on you all day like clockwork because now this is something that's at stake with other higher ups in the company. And at the end of the day, you actually do launch the campaign, but you don't get any appreciation. You don't get any thanks. You just did what you were supposed to do. And you literally feel out of breath. You've just been pushing hard all day. Your heart is racing, but at the same time, you're exhausted. And when you finally start to slow down and come down and you're leaving work, then you start to feel foggy. You might start to have a headache. You're hungry because you haven't eaten all day. You're definitely dehydrated because you haven't, had water all day. And you go home and you crash. So that's another day that's yeah. I think probably not atypical for some people. And so, excuse me, while these are specific scenarios, I think the general idea is relatable and people have lots of other experience that may be similar or may be different. But within these scenarios and with others that people feel, there's many different types of job stress. So there's a competitive environment, where where you are pushed to perform and to succeed. And now that could be good or it could be bad. It could be good because you could find yourself being pushed to achieve something they're actually really proud of that you might not even have imagined you could have done, or you're happy with the end result. But the flip side of that is you could be pushed to a point where it's too hard, it's beyond your comfort zone, and you feel out of control. Then there's tension with your boss or with other employees. That's very real. It could be personality clashes, it could be power plays, it could be about expectations of performance. Or worse, those people could be just straight up unsupportive and out for themselves. Unrealistic workloads are another source of stress in the workplace, where you're always playing catch up. You could be always showing up in work early, with the cleaning staff, always staying late. You could be doing work on the weekends, whether you're back in the office or you're bringing it home. Persistent deadlines cause a lot of stress. You could be constantly under pressure and feel like a tightness in your chest or, again, like a shortness of breath. And then you could also be the one passing that on because now you're pushing teams to work hard. So you're kind of actually now perpetuating this, with the deadlines and the workload. Difficult clients are another source of stress in the workplace. Some of them require a lot of work and a lot of patience or a lot of hand holding. Some of them are screamers. Some go around you and go to your boss when they want something. Lots of travel. If you travel a lot, that can be a definite source of stress when you're up early and out at, an airport or a train station. You're checking in with emails and texts to make sure your office stays on track while you're out with a client. You're working with a client all day. And then you're grabbing food at an airport. You're eating out with a client again. And if you are having dinner with that client, it's another scenario with, a big swing expense account kind of dinner, or you're back at the airport. So either way, you're racing to get home on a late flight or something, or you're leaving a late dinner with a client and going back to a hotel. And chances are it's a late night and you might not sleep well on that night either. So you could be someone who, and there's plenty of other things that people have examples of, but you could be surviving or you could be thriving in these different kind of environmental scenarios. But there's other things that cause stress too, like feeling unappreciated for all of your hard work. You could never be acknowledged or recognized. Somebody might never mention that you're doing really good work or hard work, or you might be up for a promotion that doesn't ever come. You could be kind of on the periphery of the in crowd or the A team. Those are the ones that the CEO and the top management always stop by your desk and say hi, and they know their names. You could be working colleagues with these people, but top management doesn't necessarily know you, so you could feel kind of left out. You could also be underpaid. You could literally be underpaid or not feel valued for what you're worth based on your experience, or maybe compared to another colleague. You could be told you're due a raise, and year over year that doesn't come because of some external company factors, and you can't really do anything about that. You could feel a lack of control at your office, and that could really extend out further, not just from your work, but to your life. You could experience job security and then not really knowing where your next paycheck could come from. Or you could find yourself really juggling all this crazy work schedule along with a personal life. You may have a family to take care of or an older parent. You might have other financial obligations. You might have other extracurricular activities, but you could just find yourself really busy. So in any kind of a situation like this, you could find that in general, your days are nonstop, you're pressured, you're always on, and these things are really physically and mentally taxing, and these things also affect you emotionally, and before you know it, you're starting to feel stress, whether you realize it or not. And what I mean by that is a lot of people do go on with these kind of schedules, and they actually think it's normal because we're conditioned to work hard, to feeling in control, And a lot of this comes out of trying to establish ourselves, establish success in our careers, earn good money, again, support family. And we might not even question it. Or if we do, we kind of tend to accept things as they are. That's the price of getting ahead. But for everybody, stress is really personal. It depends on the work demands and how much you feel you are in control or out of control. So how you perceive stress is also another type of stress, along with the physical and the mental and the emotional aspects of what that means. So all these kind of add up to an increased risk for stress-related conditions. So going back to the workday and like how you might be coping with some of this from the food and nutrition perspective, we talked about what happens when there's a client or when you're traveling. But what if you're in the office? You might be eating at your desk. Sometimes people eat all 3 meals at their desk, right? And chances are, in that case, you're maybe not always making the best decision about what you're eating and you're drinking. You could potentially be picking up just whatever's available or quick, or maybe what's left over from somebody else's client meeting. It's already in the office. So, oftentimes you could find that if you're in this kind of intense environment, your eating pace is fast, so you're not necessarily chewing. You could be gulping and not really sipping, your drink. You might not be even breathing between bites, so you're overeating. You're also like hunched over at a desk, because you're working or, you're checking your phone. And you're not really thinking about the food, and eating becomes sort of a mindless activity because basically you're hungry and now you're distracted. So this isn't really a good scenario for digesting your food properly. And all this kind of convenient, processed, and packaged type of fast foods don't necessarily add value, in terms of good calories. In fact, with a lot of the things, added things in them, they actually probably add a load onto your system. So you're not really getting the nutrition that you need for your body or your mind to perform to this kind of level that you want to stay strong and keep up day after day. You might skip lunch altogether just because you're too busy. I read some statistic recently that just like 61% of people at work actually skip lunch just because of work demands. That's a lot. When you have a night when you're out of the office, if it's a dinner with a client and you're getting home late, you're going to bed on a full stomach. So that's going to be really hard to digest, and it's really going to be hard to get to sleep with that. Or if you're not with a client, if you're on your own, you could be grabbing takeout because it's too late to cook, or you're too tired, or maybe you just don't eat at all. You just crash. So none of these are really good scenarios in terms of eating well and getting nutrition on top of it. So given the complexity of your workday and all this other stress bearing down on you and how you're eating, you could find yourself relying on stimulants like in the morning, energy drinks and caffeine, just simply to get up and make it through the day, and maybe too many of those. And conversely, at night, you could find yourself relying on alcohol or sleep aids just to get to sleep. So what you start looking at is a life that's out of balance. So you're working hard, you're not necessarily getting the self-care that you need. You could not realize that this is happening, or you could conversely be thinking, oh, not me, I'm fine, this will never happen to me. But it actually becomes a lifestyle. And that's where it almost becomes your normal, quote unquote. So in terms of some symptoms, we kind of touched on some, but just kind of like put them all together, like symptoms and factors that accompany stress. On the emotional side, so there's this sense of feeling overwhelmed. There's anxiousness, there's anger. You could feel frazzled or on edge. You might find that you cry easily and not know why. There might be depression. You might feel hopeless or helpless. Maybe there's some insecurity. You might feel isolated. There's certainly moodiness, there's irritability. Some people in kind of extreme conditions could feel or express rage. There could be resentment, paranoia, or even boredom. So that's a lot of different things. On a physical side, there's also a lot of things. You could feel constipated or diarrhea or just bloated. There's weight gain or weight loss. There's insomnia, which we mentioned, or poor quality of sleep. You could feel stomach ache or heartburn. There's headaches, which could maybe be as strong as migraines. You could have tightness in your chest and shortness of breath. You could get sick often, like with cold and flu symptoms, or feel muscle aches and cramps and cold sores and things like that. You could experience rapid heart rate or elevated blood pressure. You could develop food sensitivities. Conversely, you could crave sweet and salty foods. You could have insulin resistance, brain fog, feel fatigued, poor nutrition, which we just talked about. Hair loss is one thing. Hormone imbalance, lightheadedness. You could have a decreased sex drive. You could experience muscle or bone loss, or you could have skin problems. So that's just some of the symptoms, emotional and physical.
That's a lot.
So I know, and when you see it written down as a list, both of them, that's almost overwhelming. But when you have chronic stress, these symptoms and these different factors are what can lead to adrenal fatigue, especially if they go on long enough, and especially if you have multiple symptoms. It's not always easy to identify what's adrenal fatigue, because these symptoms represent their own conditions, and also some of these in combination can resemble other types of problems that people might have. So let's talk about the adrenal glands for a minute and what they do, just to kind of give that some context. So there are these two little thumb-sized organs that sit right above your kidneys, and they're part of your endocrine system. And they produce over 50 different hormones that affect almost every bodily function, organ, and tissue that you've got, either directly or indirectly. Things like reproduction, appetite, blood sugar, stress management, digestion, muscle contraction, all the super important things that we need, right? So hormones react to each other, and they respond to conditions in your body. And your adrenal glands are also responsible for balancing your different hormones, and they all work very closely together. So if one is out of balance, there's a pretty good chance that at least one, if not more, other one is also out of balance. So your adrenal glands play a huge role in your stress response. So when your brain registers a threat, whether it's, again, emotional, mental, or physical, part of your adrenals release cortisol and adrenaline hormones to help you react. And this is what we call that fight or flight response. So blood rushes to your brain, to your heart, to your muscles, and you're ready to take on whatever the threat is. And another part of your adrenal glands produce something else called corticosteroids, and they actually reduce all these other processes in your body, like digestion and immune response and things that aren't necessarily, quote unquote, for your immediate survival at that moment. So this is creating a surge of cortisol and your stress hormones so that you're ready to take on whatever stress is coming at you. So that leads into adrenal fatigue. So adrenal fatigue is this condition where your body and your adrenal glands can't keep up with this tremendous amount of stress that you're experiencing on a daily basis. So now you're kind of in a chronic state of experiencing stress, and your body trying to react and help you handle that. So normally your adrenal glands would release cortisol on a diurnal rhythm. So it starts in the morning and rises throughout the day, and then starts to decline in the evening so that your body can sleep. But with this prolonged and chronic stress, this rhythm shifts, and your adrenals can become overloaded and then improperly release your cortisol. So then you've got inconsistent levels in your bloodstream, sometimes more than normal, sometimes less than normal. And that could have two different outcomes. You could have high cortisol all the time, or your rhythm of your cortisol could be reversed. So you could wake up very tired because your cortisol is not rising in the morning because it's reversed. And then you just need, again, these significant amounts of caffeine and energy drinks and things like that. But then you've got fluctuations throughout the day. So you could get a cortisol boost in the morning, but then crash at 2, it's up at 6, it's down at 9, back and forth. And then find yourself peaking at 11 o'clock, exactly when your cortisol should be going down. So basically that leads to this like tired and wired feeling. So you've had this incredibly long, heavy, stressful, intensive day, and you're exhausted, but you can't get to sleep because your internal rhythms are off. And then at night when you're supposed to be sleeping, resting, digesting, repairing, you may not be sleeping, or it might be kind of punchy or restless. And then when you have to get up in the morning and go again, cortisol's not there for you. So when somebody is chronically stressed, what can happen is your adrenals are basically like keeping the gas pedal to the floor, trying to help you out. But eventually that could lead to burnout. And when that happens, it's like your whole system just shuts down, kind of literally like when the car runs out of gas. So this could be an advanced stage of hormone imbalance, and this is what can lead to adrenal fatigue. At this point, you're going to have a hard time functioning on a daily basis.
And how do people find out if that's what they have, Cyndie?
I think at this point where you get to an advanced stage where you're starting to feel literally fatigued all the time, and you're going to start to notice other things happening as well. Like some of these other symptoms might be easy to blow off. You might think like, oh, that's just me. I do just get dizzy sometimes, or yeah, I get headaches sometimes, or I get stomach aches sometimes, or you might write it off to something else like, yeah, I had a crazy night last night. I feel like crap today. I think you can only do so much of that. And at some point when you start to notice, and there's no way you can't notice, like you start to have more than one symptom and you start to have them often all the time, you literally will start to feel bad all the time and start to feel like something's wrong. And that when you start get combined with these other symptoms, like maybe a shortness of breath, or maybe panic attacks, or maybe this racing heart, and then combined with some of the other emotional things, like maybe you're crying or you feel anxious, when you start to see and realize and really feel inside that something's wrong and there's more than one symptom and they're happening more often, that's a point to raise your hand and stop and think, I need to address what's going on. When I had adrenal fatigue, I went to lots of different doctors. Something was clearly wrong and they couldn't find anything wrong. So it was really hard to get tested for adrenal fatigue. But I think now with naturopathic doctors and functional medicine doctors and a little bit more of awareness to how stress does affect people more on this physical kind of level, I think medical practitioners are a little more open to looking a little more thoroughly about what these different things could add up to. But I would say an initial self-diagnosis would be, how many of these symptoms do I have? How often are they happening? When I stop and listen, do I think something's really going wrong? And am I pushing too hard? So I think you can do a lot to self-diagnose an initial assessment of where you're at and acknowledge that you do need some help, and then seek a medical professional that you can talk about this in totality with, because it is more than one thing, and it does cross emotional and physical lines to be kind of a combination of factors. And then I think you'll want to talk to your medical professional about how you move forward in terms of, figuring out exactly what's going on in your body and how you would address it.
Yeah, and it's really a shame because this is one of those, it's a syndrome, it's not a disease. And so it really measures kind of within the normal levels of regular blood work. And it's a real adrenal insufficiency, and the medical diagnosis is not what we're talking about, which is not Cushing's syndrome and, too high a cortisol output. It's just like this irregularity, and the cortisol is imbalanced throughout the day. And so there's testing that we can do for that, but it's not within the medical paradigm to do those testing. So often people recognize that they themselves are suffering, but if they go to a conventional doctor, then their conventional doctor might think that they have something else and be looking towards anxiety, depression, because all their blood work looks normal. And they're really not considering this adrenal fatigue as a true medical issue or health issue.
Right. So I think it's important to find a doctor that wants to work with you and can listen to you. So feeling comfortable that someone's not going to tell you there's nothing wrong, or it's all in your head, or it could be something else when you feel like it's a little bit more involved. So I do think it's important to find a person you feel comfortable working with. But there are a few beyond that, what I mentioned about how you can start to do a self-assessment. There are quite a lot of things that somebody can do if they think that there's something wrong and they want to at least establish some of their own baseline parameters for taking better care of themselves, because a lot of it does come down to self-care too. That can make a big difference. And I think the biggest thing you can do is pay attention. You have to pay attention to your body. It sounds so easy and so obvious, and some people might not really know what that means, but you have to really acknowledge that these things are happening to you and pay attention to your body and be willing to take action to make some changes. So I do have some suggestions on how somebody could at least implement some of their own good lifestyle practices to do the best that they can to try and either, hopefully people are not in an adrenal fatigue situation, but if they are, recover from that, or maybe if they feel like they could be going down a path or they need to take care of themselves, implement some of these things to get better self-care on a daily basis to at least help themselves as best as they can. So The first thing I would
Great.
say in terms of looking at lifestyle changes that would reduce stress is literally just like take a pause, just step back and honestly evaluate where you're at in terms of your workday, how busy you are you actually feeling stress? And then think about where you can establish boundaries and clear priorities on those things, whether it's boundaries between your work life and your personal life in terms of like time and whatnot, and certainly boundaries with other people, you know, and remember that these things are perceived stress. So if you feel like something's stressful, then it is to you. And know that it's okay to ask for help. If you feel like you've experienced some kind of a trauma, or if this perceived stress is, you know, real for you, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to seek counsel or to get support. I know some people don't want to admit that or don't want to do that, but if you're in a situation where you feel like something's not right and it's beyond what you think you can do, don't be shy about it. Just even go online and start to ask questions and start to look for things. Don't not admit that something's might not maybe going the way that you want it to, and hide from it. And then look at different ways of getting relaxing and restorative activities into your routine. So as far as self-care kinds of things, I think one of the super important things I would put right up on top is establishing a regular bedtime routine. And you really do want to get 8 or 10 hours a night. I know people think like, oh, I'm too busy, I can't do that. But you have to find a way to get, at least carve out the time to get to sleep and set up what could be a bedtime routine. We can talk, you know, later about some different good nighttime practices. But also rest when you're tired. Sometimes when we've got these super busy schedules and we're used to being on go, that extends into the weekend too. And so even if you're not working, you could have a super busy weekend. Maybe you're a weekend warrior with your fitness, you've got a lot of plans going on. But if you're tired, you do need to rest. Just do it once. Just don't have any Saturday night plans and just stay in and rest and see how amazing you feel after one night. So that rest is super important. I also think exercise is really important because if you're working in an office or even if you're traveling, you're in your head all day, you're in an office all day, you're behind a computer all day, you're hunched over, and exercise is a chance for you not just to get out of your head, but to move your body. Even moderate things like walking are really good, just to move and to be outside. Yoga in particular is really good. You know, you get in contact with your body through those practices, and that can really help with stress reduction as well. Meditation is another great one. And I know some people think they can't do it, they don't know how to do it. You can close your eyes for a minute and just breathe and just think about nothing. And it's been proven that breathing exercises can really change the physiology of your body. And you could do a simple like 4-5-4, like breathe in 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, just for a couple seconds. You could do that at your desk. Some people like to breathe early in the morning or meditate early in the morning. You can think about, great, what's my intention for the day? Some people like to set aside time at night. And I think a really good thing to do at night is to think of one thing that you're grateful for. I know you might be thinking like, I'm not grateful for anything. I've got this crazy job. Life isn't good, blah, blah, blah. And if you're in that place, you can find something good. Whether it's the one day when you did have a good meal, maybe you wore something that made you feel good, maybe somebody did give you a compliment, maybe somebody smiled. You could find the smallest thing, whatever it is that you can feel grateful for. Or you could have a lot of good things. Maybe you talked to your mom that day and you're like, oh, we had a nice call. Whatever it is, that could be part of what you could call a meditative practice. And it's something to help you transition out of a disturbed mindset or a busy mindset into something that's going to be a little calmer and hopefully lead to sleep. So meditation is super important.
Yeah.
Connections with people are great. You know, when I talk to you, Dr. Millie, that's great. Or talking to friends or talking to your mom. It's like, well, here's another person, another nice person, a like-minded person, somebody I enjoy talking to, laughing with, relaxing with. That's going to take you out of this stressful headset and at least give you a timeout for whenever you're with that person, or know that you could call somebody, right? One thing that I like to do is take a news fast and take an internet break. So I really try and stay off the computer on the weekend. And I find that not only don't I not miss it, I feel like, thank goodness, I don't have to check email because I've decided I'm not going to do that. I don't have to check email. I don't miss it. And when I come back on Monday morning, I really haven't missed that much in the news. So FOMO is not real. It's okay to stay off the internet and stay off the news. And another super important thing, I think, is avoiding as much as you can negative people and negative self-talk. Now, I know there's always going to be different types of people that you come across, or you maybe have to work with, or maybe have to deal with. But maybe if you're feeling a negative energy from somebody, or somebody literally is just saying things that rub you the wrong way, maybe there's a way to, again, back to setting boundaries, figure out a way to handle your time or your energy with that person differently. Minimize your exposure to them. Just try and be positive and true to yourself. And with yourself and with the self-talk, words have a big impact on your body and your mind, and that translates into how you can heal. And I know that that might seem a little out there for some people, and some people might roll their eyes, but I think it is scientifically proven that by reducing pathological worry with thought replacement, you can actually help yourself reduce your amount of stress. And that is a matter of practicing reframing and verbalizing to yourself positive outcomes to situations. So you might find yourself always saying like, oh, I'm so stupid, I forgot to do that, or like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I should have worked a little bit harder. Poppycock. How could you say something different? Even if you don't believe it at the moment, just say it, practice it, try it on. Just say, like, you know what? I went to school, I graduated, I deserve to be at this job, I work really hard, I'm doing the best that I can, people like me, I'm showing up, you know what? I'm okay. Just say whatever you can to reframe whatever negative thing is happening. And somewhere, you know that it's true, and you might believe that it's true. If your boss is yelling at you, how could you look at that differently? Maybe it's not me. Maybe it has nothing to do with me. Maybe that person's having a bad day. Maybe that person left the house and has an issue back at home. Whatever you do to replace those negative thoughts, find a way to talk positively to yourself and eliminate those things and just say better things for yourself. And it's going to help your internal system just like calm down and feel better, to help your mind calm down. And I think that's a lot bigger than people might realize, because that's an easy default to go to. And that also takes a little bit of practice. And you're not always going to get it and not always going to be right, but it's worth trying it and just finding the language that resonates with you, and find a way that eventually maybe that could be a quicker road to saying something positive than going through some negative thoughts about yourself. So another thing, that we know about helping with self-care is looking at a healing kind of a diet. And I say diet, quote unquote, meaning a way of eating. And I think we want to try and look at regular meals, especially breakfast, knowing that that's one that kind of sets us up for the day. So how you eat, I think, is just as important as what you eat. And how we talked about cortisol having this diurnal rhythm, and maybe with adrenal fatigue, you could be off balance. I think also finding a way to support your body's natural rhythms as well as possible with regularly scheduled meals could be something that could really help establish some sort of a balance or a rebalance. And it also could help prevent dramatic dips in your blood sugar. And knowing that cortisol and insulin are pretty closely related, and when one is high, the other is high, I think if you could help minimize any kind of spikes with food, that could also help minimize a cortisol response, and also help contribute to sustained energy throughout the day, which again is going to help you be a little bit more resilient in some of these daily stressors that you could be experiencing. So meals, as we know, high quality protein, good fat, unrefined carbs and fibers. And we can get in detail a little bit more about what those would be, but I think the idea of combining these kind of meals that would help you get it's not just food, it's not just grabbing something, but it's more of a meal. And it can help balance your blood sugar, and then again help with these spikes and these crashes and things like that. And so of course, we all want to know, but just want to reiterate that we want to avoid things like processed foods and things that have pesticides and toxins and added sugars and antibiotics and hormones and preservatives and all this other stuff, because they don't really add anything from a nutrition point of view, and they actually take away from what we get, because now our body has an increased burden of dealing with those other types of things. Another thing we could potentially look at, and this is where your healthcare professional can help you, is looking at adrenal supporting supplements and herbal remedies. So there's things like adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha or rhodiola and schisandra and holy basil, I believe. Licorice root, which is a spice, can be helpful. There's fish oil, there's B complex vitamins, which help with your energy, as well as vitamin C and D. There's magnesium and selenium, which help support, and then essential oils such as lavender or rosemary. And you wouldn't take all of these. You would take one or maybe two at a time. But again, you depending on what your different symptoms are and things like that, and you talk to your naturopathic doctor, you can figure out what's a good place for you to start. And I guess the one thing I would want to leave.
figure that out more specifically according to what the needs of the patient
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, those are just some ideas.
Yeah, those are great.
And I guess the one thing I would want to leave people with, if it's not self-apparent already, is this idea of self-care. And actually, self-care is the thing that is key to success in the workplace and by keeping you healthy. You know, we all have only so many hours in a day, and you can't get more hours in a day. And I think productivity is probably less about managing your time and more about managing your energy. So we can all be sharper and have more energy with the time that we do have. So self-care is actually the thing that's going to give you an edge, because when you rest, your mind and your body are sharper, and that's what you're going to bring to the day. So these 60 plus hours a week are not really going to work in your favor. You're not necessarily going to be more productive. You might think you're getting more done, but after a certain amount of hours, you're just spinning your wheels and you're not. So spending that time with self-care, making sure your body and your mind are sharp, are really what's going to give you that competitive edge and help you manage the time that you are working a little bit better. So we need to rest and take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
So
Those
that's
are all
kind of,
such great tips. I mean, it's so important how we really reframe the way we're living on a day-to-day basis, and how important that is, making room for ourselves to be present in our life. I think that's, especially people who are working in corporate America, and you have, maybe you can talk about your story a little bit if you're interested in doing so. I think that would help people understand what the process is like. Because when we're working in corporate America and everything seems so urgent and the demands are so high, and nobody is ever going to say, you're working too hard, you should really take a break. Maybe you shouldn't stay late. Maybe you should go for lunch now. There's no imposed boundaries within the corporate structure to allow the worker an easier road, an option for themselves. It's all about getting as much out of the employee as possible. And I think with research, you know, now that the productivity scales and assessments and trials are published now, and they know that actually more time in the office does not equal productive time, and you know, vacation actually allows for better productivity and fewer sick days, and so the tides are turning bit by bit. But historically in corporate America, I think still the practice of the workers day to day is such that it's bleeding every single amount of energy out of the employee as possible, so that they're, you know, getting the most for their dime, kind of thing. And that's really to the absolute detriment of the individual who is trying to work on their health. So
I totally agree. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned was the company's never going to care about you. They care about business. And even the enlightened companies now, I'm glad that some companies are bringing in employee wellness types of programs, and they want you to be well so that you can be a good producer, right? Less absenteeism for them, less healthcare costs, better productivity for them. And that's not a bad thing, but that's their perspective on having employees be productive and therefore to be healthy. But the onus is really on you, is to be your own best health care advocate and take care of yourself, and know that what you need to show up to work, you do want to work well, you do want to show up well, you want to play well, you want to grow as a person, you want to do work that you're proud of. And so that is a reason that we work, and that's what you have in common. So yes, you want to be a good producer at work. It's just a reflection of you and your goals and your values and everything you're trying to achieve in your success. Those are great. But where you have to draw the line is you also need to have a personal life. Everything that you do outside of work is going to help contribute to you as a complete whole person and make you a better person to show up at work too. And you do want to, work is just, none of us are one dimensional, right? We're all multidimensional, and you want to pay attention to what your practices are like at home. Well, how do you sleep? I just feel better, whether I'm going to have a great weekend or I just feel fresh and alive and I've got natural energy. Guess what? I don't even need coffee today. I'm high on life. I feel great. And that's totally possible. You want to show up for your kids. You want to show up for your family. You want to do the fun stuff. You want to leave work at a reasonable time and do stuff after work and have fun. And it's really on you to set the boundary. And it's about respecting yourself enough to say, no, I am going to set this boundary and I'm going to keep it. And it's not about being selfish. It's not about being mean. It's about self-preservation in the best way, because when you're living a life that's in balance and you feel good and you look good because you're taking care of yourself, I believe that that is truly leading by example. And that's what you want to do. And that's how you're going to be a good leader when you're in a company. But I think you just always have to remember, and look, I'm not saying you can't ever work hard, you can't have short time periods, like, no, I'm going to work super hard, I'm going to achieve something. I'm not saying that at all. I'm all about setting goals and working hard and achieving something. It's about doing that in a very planned and specific way. But that fits within a whole, a balanced approach to what you're doing. And then that's fine. That's actually looking at it in a very structured way that makes sense for you, and you're going to take care of yourself within that kind of framework of, okay, I'm going to push really hard for 2 weeks, I've got this deadline and my book's going to be published. Something like that could be super exciting, and therefore give you energy. And then you get back to, maybe you're going to meditate for 2 minutes now instead of 1 minute because you got a little bit more time, but you're still going to do those healthy practices. So I'm all for making sure that you set up your boundaries so that you can do the things that are important in the rest of your life and make you feel good as a person. And that's how you're going to show up.
Yeah, there's even studies now showing the people who goof off the most and like leave early and take long lunches are the ones who make the most money at work and get promoted the most. And it's because they're prioritizing themselves and doing what they need to do in order to make themselves happy and good humored and great to be around. Whereas the drones are the people who are just like working exhaustingly and taking the brunt of all the work. Everything trickles down. They say the shit trickles down, right? And so those who are taking on the burden of that are also and getting exhausted and probably the hardest working, but are kind of you do have to own it because you're kind of allowing yourself to become a shell of what your potential is, not only just like in terms of your productivity, but in terms of your personality and your happiness and the energy you have to spare to give out to others.
And the drone is what becomes cyclical, right? It just fuels itself, so you never actually get out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so that's why this talk is so important. And I think that you haven't talked about your personal story, but if you wanted to, it would be a good, I think people will really resonate to that because so many people don't even know that this is them in their workplace. Now we have a comment that says saying that describes me. And so, yeah, thanks Dawn for like coming clean with that because, quite frankly, this is a reason for why I cannot have a 9-to-5 job because I would end up being that person as well. And then I end up being miserable. And so in my practice, I find that I have to tell people to quit their jobs. This job is not good for you. You're not a good candidate to be an employee because basically in order to be a good employee, you kind of have to be more of a selfish person as opposed to more of a driven worker type to become more successful. And even though that's completely ironic and the opposite of what we'd expect, those people make the best employees because they just don't really care about all of the rules and all of the performing and all of the pressures on them to do what their bosses say, So I'm not saying that that's what makes the company most successful, but in a way it kind of is, which is another reason for why startups, so many people are kind of engaging in these smaller companies where there's more a liberal atmosphere and more easy-going, and people can show up to work as they are. And this is like the way of the future. I think that the corporate structure is kind of like I'm not going to say it's dying, but I think so. That's like, who wants to work at a corporation when you could work for something smaller and more intimate?
I'm with you. I can't be that 9-to-5 person anymore. And so you asked about my background. Those scenarios I gave you were real from my life, and there's many more, which I don't want to get panic attack now thinking about it. No, I'm kidding. But I was the corporate person who was working like 60 hours a week. And I was very much the person that I was describing earlier about just working hard to get ahead, to establish a career, to make it in New York kind of thing. And at the expense of personal time, at the expense of relationships, and eventually at the expense of my health. I found that I would get to work and not even remember my commute to work. I would feel foggy. I couldn't sleep at night. I was waking up with night sweats. I'd be soaking wet and then I'd be freezing. I found that, and I had a pretty decent 6-figure job, and all of a sudden I had problems reading proposals. I just couldn't make sense of them. I managed teams, and I had a problem like dealing with people. And I mean, I was educated, I worked hard, I was on top of my game, and then all of a sudden I wasn't. And somewhere inside me, there was a little voice that's like, what the hell is going on? It was weird to me. I did start having panic attacks. I had shortness of breath. I would work out really hard because I thought, like, let me just, like, I used to go to spin classes at night after work, because to me, I was like going to channel out all this energy. And in some regard, that was a good strategy because I got all this work stress out. But then I was super exhausted, and that was actually adding another stress onto my body, even though you would think working out is a good stress. My body was under such amount of stress and pressure at that moment that I was pushing myself too hard by doing that, even though it also released all these other thoughts and things that had happened during the day. And eventually I got so worn down, I went home one day in the middle of the day, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I passed out, and I couldn't move. I literally couldn't move. And that just started a whole, and eventually I did, sometime the next day, but it was difficult. And I kept having all these other symptoms. And I know there's stomach aches. I had constipation horribly. I had all kinds of things. I won't bore you with all the details, but I went to doctors and I was told, no, there's nothing wrong, over and over and over. I was told that I was making it up, all this stuff. And something was extremely, very, very wrong. And I knew it. And eventually I took a time of a leave of absence from work. And I just proceeded to figure out on my own with different practitioners and doctors and therapies. And I learned and tried all kinds of stuff, what was going on. And actually was a clinical nutritionist that enlightened me as to what was going on with the adrenal fatigue path. And ultimately it was these herbs and supplements and a different way of eating, along with self-care and rest, and under this person's guidance, that helped me. And it was a long road to recovery. But probably one of the bigger things I learned, because I was this person who was just going, who was working hard, who was establishing my career, was, wait, it's not so black and white. There's a lot of gray in there. And I started to understand the gray, because I'm like, what the hell happened to me? How did this happen? I was just beside myself. And the more I thought and thought and thought and learned, I realized I didn't take care of myself. These things like self-talk, these things like poisonous people that you meet, all this stuff really works on you. And once I started to realize how I needed to make changes, it was easy. There was no going back. I just knew that I was in trouble. My body needed help. I needed help. And eating well wasn't hard. Making sure I got sleep wasn't hard. All of it was like, somehow it all got reframed for me. And then I knew that, like you said, I was never going to be in a 9-to-5 again. I'm clearly working with other people. So I'm not saying, I'm going to be a hermit. But I found another way to respect myself and take care of myself and realize, and now maybe I had to get hit over the head to realize you have to take care of yourself to be a stronger, better version of yourself, which is what led me to health coaching, to help, other people hopefully prevent and not recover, but if recover for sure, but know that there's another way. And nobody said to me along the way, like, maybe you should just take care of yourself. So I'm really glad we're in a time now where this awareness is being raised. And if that's what's brought into the workplace through these different programs, at least people could have the awareness or know there's somewhere to get help, or think like, I remember that person said something to me about taking care of myself, and that's what's going to make me stronger. So that's where I'd like to think that all of us are kind of, collectively in this time now of looking at health care positively, can, not just be our own best advocate, but for each other a little bit more.
Yeah, and unfortunately it takes like a crash or, that burnout. You have to get to the place of exhaustion where you're adrenaline junkie, that's not even working to keep yourself at that high cortisol level. If you're not stressed enough during the day, then you go to spin classes at night, and kind of thinking that that's going to be the solution to your problem, when it's so hard to unwind. It's not until your body absolutely collapses or people get a diagnosis of some sort that because oftentimes people will get another kind of diagnosis during this process also, if the adrenal fatigue isn't enough to be like, ting, ting, you have to change your life. And so hopefully this kind of education preempts that so that people are, even if they're not hearing it from their doctor, that there's something wrong and they have to take care of themselves and they have to change their lifestyle and kind of take control of their own self-care. Hopefully conversations like this, and I want to thank you for sharing your story, because I think that's so important for people to also be able to contextualize it with, a human story and not just the facts, as important as the facts and the delivery of your presentation is. So thank you for that. And everybody can relate to this in some way. We all get to the place where we're so wound up, or, observe children that are so wound up that they can't sleep. And if that's continuing to happen on a daily basis, then it is going to change our hormones, and it is going to become this lifestyle that we've essentially chosen, which is really not working for us, that we have to intervene on, give ourselves an intervention. Before the intervention happens to you, you can choose to intervene. So, and there are lots of supports and health coaches and nutritionists and functional doctors and naturopathic doctors, and that's really, quite frankly, why we're doing this type of broadcast. So thank you for your presentation.
I think the challenge,
Cyndie,
you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Did you want to say something? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, just I think the challenge is for people that are in this situation and don't realize it or don't want to face it or think it's too hard to do something. There's a lot of times, especially when we're younger and just getting started, think like, oh, that won't happen to me. And it's great if you're strong enough to kind of go for a certain period of time and not have anything happen to you. I mean, but you just have to look for your future and be careful that you're not finding yourself in a situation where later on down the road you could have these potential health problems. So it's kind of knowing about it, raising awareness, and knowing early on that you kind of can set yourself up for success by implementing these self-care practices, whether you're not feeling adrenal fatigue right now, or you know that you're going to be somebody who's got a really busy kind of a workload ahead. Just set these things in practice early. Don't wait till you've actually got a problem to start thinking about self-care or having to backpedal that. So I would hope that this could be just as preventative for people before they even get there or think that they could have a health problem as much as it for people who might be experiencing some things they need to address. So starting early, whether you've got stress in your life or not, is all these things that we talked about are always going to be good to help people, whatever stage of life they're in with their career.
Yeah, and the positive side of it is that making these changes for yourself actually feels good. I mean, clearly, when you get into this situation, it's not that you're not strong enough, it's that you're too strong, in fact, and you're bringing on problems that you don't need to support. And so it's actually changing our mindset that, oh, this lifestyle just does not work for me. I don't like it. I don't need it. And I'm going to do something else that's better for me and more, and get out of this situation that I'm really not happy with and I'm just clearly coping with, or, so not being able to cope with something that makes you unhappy is not a weakness. It's a sign of, it's just your body speaking louder to you that this is not the way for you forward. So
your wake up.
Yeah, also to keep that in mind. So it's, yeah, thank you so much for that. And so Cyndie is available at appetite4life.com. So you can check her out there and get in touch with her that way. And of course, NatMed Coach offers weekly health coaching sessions in an intimate group environment. We do it over Zoom, and we have coaches coming on who are discussing special interests and specialties of their own in this group coaching environment. Next week, we've got Ali Might. She's our demo coach. She is going to be giving self-care demonstration on how to use aromatherapy in the home. She is an aromatouch therapist. That is on Tuesday at noon. And then on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m., we've got Betsy Le Gallet, who will be talking about how to detoxify your home and your body, how to stop using those harmful products that Cyndie was discussing, how to get pesticides and chemicals out of your home that are poisoning your pets and your home environment, the air that you're breathing. So definitely tune in for that. The link to register for those is natmedcoachhealthclub.com. And not only do you get that session, but you get the entire month free when you use the code BURSTFREE. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks again to Cyndie Burkhart for this enlightening discussion on stress in the workplace and adrenal fatigue. And we'll be back on Facebook Live on October 7th with functional nurse coach Paula Loverick discussing essential and secondary hypertension. So please tune in for that. Thanks so much, Cyndie, again.
Thank you, Dr. Millie.
Website.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.